Elon Musk walked into the diner, exhausted after a long morning of meetings and phone calls. The relentless California heat had followed him from his Tesla factory to the city. But there was something about the steady rhythm of the diner that called to him. It was his favorite place to unwind when he could steal a moment for himself. No press, no expectations, just a little peace and quiet. He was deep in thought as he slid into his usual booth, glancing out at the bustling street through the windows. The world was moving at a fast pace, but inside, there was a stillness that Elon appreciated. The staff at the diner knew him by name, and a few of the servers nodded as they passed, giving him a subtle but friendly wave. Elon smiled, nodding back as he glanced at the menu, trying to decide on what he wanted to eat. But before he could even make his choice, something caught his eye. He noticed a father and son sitting at a table near the window, both of them clearly in some sort of disagreement. The father was on a loud phone call, gesturing with his hands as he spoke, clearly agitated. The son, no older than 4, sat silently across from him, his little face drawn with discomfort. Elon watched as the boy squirmed in his seat, clearly bored and unsure of what to do with himself. His father, oblivious to his son's discomfort, continued to shout into his phone, his attention entirely consumed by the conversation. The boy's eyes wandered, eventually landing on Elon. Their gazes locked, and for a brief moment, Elon saw a flicker of anxiety in the child's eyes. Elon wasn't one to think much about what others might be going through. But there was something about the situation that tugged at him. It was easy to see that the boy wasn't happy, and the discomfort in his posture spoke volumes. Without thinking much about it, Elon raised an eyebrow and offered the boy a friendly smile. The boy's reaction was immediate. He quickly averted his gaze, his small face flushed with embarrassment. Elon tilted his head slightly, wondering if his smile had somehow startled the boy. But before he could think too much about it, he turned his attention back to the menu, his thoughts still wandering as he waited for his food. A few minutes passed, and then, just as Elon was about to take a bite of his food, he noticed the boy again. This time, the boy stood up and walked slowly toward him. Elon froze for a moment, uncertain of the child's intentions. The boy's eyes were wide and unsure, and he hesitated as he approached, glancing nervously over his shoulder at his father. Elon smiled again, trying to reassure him. "Hey there," he said in a calm, friendly tone. "How's your day going?" The boy didn't respond right away, but instead seemed to study Elon's face. After a moment, the boy whispered something that Elon didn't quite catch. He leaned in slightly to hear better. "What did you say?" Elon asked gently. The boy's voice was barely audible. "He's not nice to me," he whispered, his eyes downcast. Elon's heart sank. It was a simple statement, but it held so much weight. He wasn't sure exactly what the boy meant, but there was no mistaking the pain in his voice. Elon glanced quickly over at the father, who was still on the phone, entirely unaware of what was happening. There was an unsettling sense of urgency in the air, and Elon knew he couldn't just ignore it. Without saying anything more to the boy, Elon made a snap decision. He gestured for the child to sit beside him. "Why don't you come over here for a minute?" he suggested. "Let's wait until your dad's done with his phone call." The boy looked uncertain, but he eventually nodded and slid into the seat next to Elon. The moment he sat down, Elon turned his attention to the father, making sure he was still preoccupied with the phone call. He knew that he had to keep the situation under control, but at the same time, he had no idea what was going on with this family. Elon had dealt with all kinds of difficult situations in his life, running SpaceX, managing Tesla, facing constant public scrutiny. But something about this moment felt different. This wasn't about rockets or electric cars. This was about a little boy, and that was something Elon wasn't going to ignore. The father's voice grew louder, and Elon could see the tension building in his posture. It was becoming increasingly clear that the man was growing angrier by the second, but Elon stayed calm. He turned back to the boy, who was now clutching the edge of the booth with both hands, looking increasingly nervous. Elon leaned in slightly. "Hey, what's your name?" he asked softly. "Billy," the boy whispered. "Well, Billy," Elon said, offering a reassuring smile, "you don't have to worry about anything. I'm here for you, okay?" Billy nodded, but his gaze shifted nervously toward his father, who was now off the phone and standing up, his fists clenched in frustration. Elon could feel the tension rising, and it became clear that things were escalating. Billy's father started to walk toward them, his face reddened with anger. "What's going on here?" he barked, his voice cutting through the air. "Why are you talking to my son?" Elon didn't flinch. He was used to intense situations, but this felt different. He stood up slowly, his calm demeanor never wavering. "I'm just making sure he's okay," Elon said, his tone firm but polite. "You intimidate this kid," he said, his voice low but unwavering. "He deserves to be treated with respect, just like everyone else." The father scoffed, clearly agitated, but he stopped in his tracks. Elon wasn't backing down, and something in the man's expression told him that he was beginning to second-guess his own actions. For a moment, there was silence between them, before the man spat out, "You don't know anything about me." "I don't need to know anything about you," Elon replied calmly. "But I do know that no child should ever be treated like this." The man hesitated, and then, without another word, he turned on his heel and stormed out of the diner, leaving Elon and Billy in stunned silence. Elon let out a quiet sigh of relief, watching as the father disappeared into the street. Billy looked up at Elon, his wide eyes filled with a mixture of gratitude and disbelief. "Thank you," he whispered. Elon smiled warmly at him. "You're welcome, Billy," he said. "I'm glad you're safe." The moment passed, and things seemed to return to normal. But Elon couldn't shake the feeling that he had just been part of something bigger than himself. It wasn't about the fame or fortune. It was about protecting someone who needed it, even if that someone was a little boy with a lot of fear in his heart. A few minutes later, the police arrived, responding to a call that Elon had made earlier. They took down a report, and the officers reassured Billy that everything would be taken care of. Elon, for his part, didn't need any recognition. He had done what he felt was right, and that was enough for him. As the situation calmed down, Elon turned back to Billy, who was now eating his meal and looking much more at ease. "You're going to be okay, kid," Elon said with a smile. "Just keep being strong." Billy's face lit up with a shy grin. "I will," he said. Elon finished his meal in peace, quietly satisfied with the knowledge that he had made a difference, even in the smallest way. It wasn't the usual kind of challenge he faced, but that was what made it meaningful. After all, sometimes the most important things in life weren't measured in rockets or profits, but in the kindness we show to others. Billy clutched the phone tightly as he dialed, his small fingers trembling slightly. Elon kept a watchful eye on him, giving him space but staying close enough to offer silent support. Billy spoke softly into the phone, his words faint but filled with urgency. After a few moments, his tense expression eased, and he nodded quickly, as though reassured by the voice on the other end. Elon signaled to a server and requested a piece of paper. When it arrived, he jotted down a few key details: his name, contact information, and a brief account of what had happened. Folding the paper neatly, he handed it to Billy. The boy glanced at it but didn't say anything, tucking it carefully into his pocket. A few minutes later, the diner door swung open, and a woman hurried in. Her worried eyes swept the room until they landed on Billy. Without hesitation, she rushed over and enveloped him in a tight embrace. Billy melted into her arms, his small body finally releasing the tension it had been holding on to. The woman whispered to him, her voice low and comforting, before turning to Elon. Her expression was a mixture of gratitude and distress. "Thank you," she said quietly, her voice catching slightly. Elon nodded, offering her a reassuring smile. "He's a brave kid," he said simply. She took a deep breath, steadying herself, and guided Billy toward the door. The boy looked back at Elon one last time, his eyes wide with a mixture of awe and gratitude. Elon raised a hand in a small wave, watching as they disappeared into the sunlight outside. As the door closed behind them, Elon exhaled slowly, feeling the weight of the encounter settle over him. He returned to his booth and sat down, his gaze drifting to the plate of now cold food in front of him. The hum of the diner resumed, conversations and clinking dishes filling the air once more. Elon stared out the window, the bustling world outside a sharp contrast to the quiet significance of what had just happened. For a moment, he allowed himself to sit in the stillness, his thoughts wandering. He knew the day would pull him back into its relentless pace soon enough, but for now, he let himself